Warning, disclaimer, what you're about to see may or may not make a damn bit of sense, and it may or may not resonate with you. It may or may not hold any value whatsoever in your life. If you're the kind of person who decides that material gain is what you're after, and that's what makes you happy, then so be it. So I make the disclaimer as a joke, but at the same time to say, first off, before I even make this video, to say that I am not here to say that a person should abandon their possessions and wander off into the mountains and live like a hermit. That's not living simply. In fact, to me, that is living very complicated in regards to us being social animals and wanting to talk to one another and associate. And there are certain people who can step away from that and be happy, but I would, first off, I made a list, because before I made this video I wanted to make sure I had a list of the points I wanted to make about living simply and what I mean by it. It holds value to me because it's the most useful thing that I've learned in my life. It's something that I've always held in my heart as knowing that it's the root of happiness, is to live simply. Yet at the same time, I have my left brain going on and saying, no, hey, let's go out and make some money and buy a bigger house, maybe get a car, like other people have. I don't even have my own car. It's been broken for years. Yeah, there's certain things that we have to do in order to survive in this society. So I've talked to folks who say that they take their bike everywhere and they're so proud because they do everything, right to preserve the environment and how everybody should stop driving, and we know that's impossible. I was a carpenter for years and I had to carry all my tools, and people live so far from their jobs, So living simply in this society is going to be different than living in another society or another culture. And so the list that I made here, I might as well just get started on it. The first thing is attachment. Living simply, you have to abandon attachment. That is, of course, one of the main Buddhist principles. Actually, of the two main Buddhist principles that I took away in my studies were non-attachment and life is suffering, and accepting that, and accepting that we all have ups and downs, and that's what makes life. But attachment to money and to things are what hold us back. One of my subs mentioned the other day that, he finally realized that money didn't make him happy and downsized to a smaller house, and he wished he would have learned that years ago. And I said, it's all that matters is that you've learned it. Everybody learns it at a different place in their life, a different point, but nobody dies without realizing that money doesn't bring happiness. And this is because there gets into kind of a semantics argument about happiness here. A person could say, no, but it sure can make life easier. Now, they say that a person to a degree, I think it's something like, $50,000 a year, 60, 70, I don't know, per person is considered what is the ideal happy level for the average person. And beyond that, you end up having assets to protect. You have to worry about your accounts and how much money you have. In my personal experience, when I've got $20, I have no problem spending it, but when it's 100, it's harder to break. And I can't imagine having millions and not wanting to tap into that. And money just becomes the object of affection. And it's not just money, it's things. We collect things. I am guilty. I have a lot of stuff, but it's not something that I'm attached to. I've learned to let go of the things I'm attached to. I lost my very favorite pipe, at the last Burning Man, the soak event I went to, and I was like, oh well, every time I lose something, there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter, It's like easy come, easy go. Everything is fleeting. It's like the mandalas that they make and sweep them as soon as they're done. Okay, I should go on since I have a list here. The second one is success. And that goes along with attachment in a way, but if we think that success means making a lot of money, if we think that success means that we have respect or authority or power, then we don't understand what it means to succeed. True success comes at knowing oneself. It's not what society sees you as. It's how you feel about yourself at the end of the day. Success is going to bed with a clear conscience and waking up well rested. If you're not sleeping well, it may very well be because there's some anxiety in your life about something that's holding you back. And I've been there. For years I didn't sleep well. I've learned to overcome my fears, and this is why I'm sharing this, is because it's such an important thing that I've learned, and it's taken me a lot of time. Baby steps. You can't just overnight decide, I'm going to think positive and I'm going to live simply. We know that. It's not some just spiritual realization. It's a practice, just like anything. The third thing I got here is self-image. This is a tough one. With self-esteem and self-image, the way that people perceive themselves is never the way others perceive them. And in some regards, we perceive ourselves negatively while others see us positive, and in some regards, it's the opposite. We see ourselves positively, and others will say, hey, this behavior or attitude, kind of makes you look like a chump, or it makes people feel uncomfortable. And so when you get negative feedback from people, it's easy to take that to heart and to kind of withdraw. And then your thinking becomes complex. You can't get out there and really just be yourself. And I think that that's an important thing that we all need to do. If the way that you are attracts a lot of negative attention, then it very well may be because what you're doing or the way how you're behaving is offensive to others. But if it's only a few people, maybe it's just because they envy you, or it could be because they don't like a certain aspect about you, and everyone's different. So now this is where I get into the most important things I've realized, and some of the things that are more difficult to convey. Plans. Don't make plans. My wife hates it because I don't make plans. I finally convinced her over the years that we can go to a concert and just say, without tickets or camping passes or anything, and just get what we need. I just put out a thought to the universe, and it always works out. It never doesn't. It always works out for me. And I'm not going to say that it works that way for everyone. I don't know. But in my life, it's funny because I've in the past said, well, no, I'm going to have to put in the effort first, buy the tickets or whatever the situation may be. And then I said, no, I'm just going to have to take chances. I'm going to have to actually have faith. This is where faith becomes very important to me. Having faith that the universe will provide. It's that simple. And I don't know how it works. I don't understand the mechanism of action. It doesn't matter to me. I just know that it works. And that for millions of other people who have talked about this, they say it works for them too. Going with their gut and with their heart. And sometimes your heart conflicts with what you have to do in life. But it shouldn't. I mean, if your conflict at work is that it's a job you don't support or something that's harmful to the environment or harmful to your health, quit. I was a carpenter for a long time, and I really loved it. Finished carpenter, did a lot of really fine cabinetry work, and about 3 years ago I just quit because my back and my leg was hurting, and I was like, my health is more important than that, And I was willing to sacrifice the money to be truly happy. And for a while it was tough, and it's still tough, but what matters is that you're true to how you really feel, and yeah. So anyway, about that was plans. I was kind of went off subject there, but don't make detailed itineraries for vacations or even for a trip on a drive. Just go with what you want to do. Make your plans, get your plane ticket or whatever it is, and then just go with a general idea of, well, we'll go this way. And you can plan a route, there's a lot of different things that we plan, so I can't be specific, but the more detailed your plans are, the more likely you are to be disappointed. So you might find something you didn't expect, because if you are too in a hurry to get to your destination, you might miss something important. The next one is expectations, and this one goes kind of along with plans, and it's really tied into that. We have expectations of how things are going to be. And when we make plans, that's how the expectations are developed. However, in this case, I would say we can relay expectations to people, expectations of other people. And I know that we all have it, and we've all grown up at least having certain expectations of people, and this may be something as simple as knowing how a friend is going to act or react to something you say, and being careful in wording what you say differently around a certain person, or knowing that you're going to be, that a person's going to want to do this or do this, and kind of we morph into each other's little worlds, and we do things. But when we have expectations about an outcome, And that's the same as attachment, okay? That's being attached to the outcome. And being attached to non-physical things is just as painful and disappointing as being attached to physical material objects. You can be attached to an idea. You can be attached to a belief. You can be attached to a fear. And it's very close to addiction. And in a way, I guess, the only thing that separates them is that addiction tends to affect your brain in a chemical way. The way the people, it's a chemical affecting your brain, yet your brain is constantly producing its own chemistry. And when you think about something that makes you happy or something that's scared, chemicals are produced in the brain and the gut that give you the gut feeling, make you feel fearful or feel elated. And learning to control these and acknowledge them is really very useful. My next one is beliefs. And I won't go too into this one because I think we all know where this subject ends up. I don't want to offend anyone who's a Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, whatever. I doubt I could offend a Buddhist, but and that's because Buddhism isn't a religion. It's a way of life. And this is why it's such an interesting concept, because Buddhists aren't attached to anything because they don't have plans and expectations within their religion. Christianity has many expectations of the person, as well as expectations of what's going to happen in the future, and beliefs about what's happened in the past, and it causes a lot of conflict, not just among non-Christians and Christians, but Christian groups within themselves, Presbyterians, and then we have, even the Mormon branch, which is, in a way, Christianity, just Christianity 2.0, whatever you want to call it. It's amazing because people are attached to these belief systems, and that can be very useful for a person. When I was younger, I was very anti-religion, and I spoke about it a lot, even up till recent years. But I've developed a certain acceptance after studying mythology and ancient history and seeing that people weren't just dumb, they weren't ignorant, they weren't making up stories. They were using archetypes and putting them into human form in order so people could recognize what it means to be a good person. The Christ consciousness, if you will. So this is all useful for people, but as soon as you take things literal and you become attached to the written word, very much trouble ensues. And this is why we have wars over beliefs, and it's painful to watch people do that to each other. It really is. So, I have two more. Illusion. My next one is illusion, and that comes with the last one, which is lack of insight. The quote I wrote here was just learn more and fear less. And to explain a little bit, when you start learning about what's going on in the world and you really start researching, what's happened in the past and different belief systems, different cultures, different countries, you start to see a lot of negative things emerge, along with positive things. But sometimes the negative can seem to outweigh the positive, and it seems like the more you learn, the more confusing things get. And for me, I've always been very obsessed with learning about everything I can, scientific, religious, mythology, otherwise, human body, biological, scientific, whatever. And for a while it gets a little confusing, and then everything starts coming together. New connections can be made. Okay, now I've learned about chemistry, and I also understand what happens in a nuclear weapon, so therefore I don't have to be so fearful of nuclear power if it's used in a thorium reactor with a shorter half-life, and you can start to understand and develop opinions which are based on insight, not on ignorance. And too many of us base what we say and what we believe and our values on ignorance. And it's something that's it's not a bad word. Ignorant can be used negatively. It merely means that you're ignoring the facts, or you're ignoring part of it. And often I would say that lack of knowledge and ignorance can be one and the same, but they can also be very different. Some people just don't have the knowledge that they need to make a proper assessment. They may be delved into one field and they just can't break away from that. And so by doing that, by removing those barriers of illusions, the things that we want to believe or think that are true, that we can no longer defend or have no reason to defend, then life becomes simpler as well. It's when when people get into a conversation about a subject that they feel passionate about, there can often be arguments. And much of the time, these arguments actually have a right and wrong answer. And a lot of the times they don't. There's a word for it. It's a type of philosophy that I just actually learned about recently that drives a lot of philosophers nuts. It basically says that there are no right or wrong answers, that it's all interpretation and knowing the details. You know, if you walked up and you saw a person walk up and hit someone, you might think that that was wrong. However, if you find out the person that he hit had just beat up the kid's 5-year-old son, or, you know, think of a million examples of what could have happened. It may not be right in your eyes, but in his eyes, it's the right thing to do, even though he would never do that in normal circumstances. And I think about, like, the guy who's, you know, hauling ass and weaving in and out of traffic, something that simple, and a person would think, hey, that's wrong, that's not right to do. Maybe his wife's in the passenger seat and she's got her arm torn off and he's going to the hospital. In that case, it would be right. And so letting these biased beliefs one way or another go, that's what allows us to just kind of go, huh. And people often call that wishy-washy. People can't stand wishy-washy. If they ask an opinion of like, ask me something and I say, oh, I don't know, it could be, could not be. But come on, make a decision one way or another. You know, it's kind of you're with us or against us attitude. And generally that doesn't go over well. But in some cases, it's very important to distinguish right from wrong. So it's not always the case. You know, when someone's doing something obvious or something's happening that's obviously negative, we have to embrace that. Living simply, in a nutshell, is trying to make the most of this life by letting all the details go that we don't need. And it'll take some time because our minds are always going, and we can't just pretend that we don't care anymore about our stuff or, you know, try to escape it. Something I learned long ago at a point where I wanted to just get rid of everything I owned and just go travel, you know, when I was younger. And I realized that I was trying to find myself. I wasn't trying to find a place to live or a lifestyle. And now I'm pretty much happy wherever I'm at. I guess one more to add to that list of living simply and happily would be to expect to be unhappy. And that's the only way you're going to be happy. Because sometimes we're going to have a bad moment. Sometimes I get a little bit grumpy. And instead of reveling in it or embracing it or using it or trying to ignore it, I just kind of go, oh well, you know, I'll feel better later. And generally it fades away pretty quick. But the more we try to resist it, the more it comes. And I believe this is kind of the universal law that if you don't take care of your business, it'll keep coming at you. If you screw up in a certain way in life, if you make mistakes or you try to ignore something, it will keep coming back. And you can't get rid of it. It's like a bad tooth. Speaking of which, I have right now, and it just started kind of aching while I was making this video, and I was thinking, I've just got to go into the dentist and get it taken care of, but I have these things holding me back, you know, fears of the dentist and money. Don't have insurance, that helps. But, you know, that's an excuse. And I feel like we all make excuses for little things we don't want to do to live better and feel better. And so it's instead of beating ourselves up over it, we need to keep our self-image at a level where we realize that our mistakes are okay. And it's okay to be human. That's all we can do. So peace out, everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful year.